conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. Today we're interviewing Beau Bauer. Beau Bauer was born on June 13, 1980. He served in Operation Iraqi Freedom in the Marine Corps. He achieved the highest rank of E6, Staff Sergeant. We're recording this on June 6, 2012 in Clemson, South Carolina. And I am Daniel Mack, and I'm conducting the interview, no relation. So, why don't you tell us where you were born and what led up to you eventually joining the Marine Corps?
I was born in Kettering Memorial Hospital. It's outside Dayton, Ohio. You said June 13th, 1980. I born, raised in a small town called Beaver Creek, just outside of Dayton, my whole life. And then graduated high school, kind of did nothing for a couple years. I had a good job as a land surveyor for a few years. And then, 9/11 happened, and that went on for a little bit. And then seeing what was happening in Iraq, I decided to enlist in the Marines when I was 23 years old in 2003.
All right, from the time you enlisted, where did you go to train? What was the progression? What specialties did you get?
I did basic training for the Marine Corps at Parris Island. I went in December 2003. That was about 3 months long. And then I went to infantry school, or School of Infantry at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. We were there. I was given the MOS, a military occupational specialty of 0351, which is infantry assaultment, and where we were trained extensively in demolitions and rockets, anti-armor warfare, breaching either wire doors, anything that required explosives or something blown up. From there, I was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment in Camp Pendleton, California. Falls under the 1st Marine Division, and I spent my whole time out there at Camp Pendleton with the 5th Marines.
Why did you choose the Marines?
That's a very loaded question, but pretty much, the Marine battle history, the traditions, the Marines are the best at what they do, the best light infantry. The whole soldiers from the sea mentality is very intriguing, and at the time, I wanted to get in combat as fast as possible, and I knew going to the Marine Corps Infantry would put me in the best units and the most highly trained units as fast as possible, as opposed to if I wanted to go to the Army and go through like a jump school and then a Ranger school and go through that process to be part of the Army's elite, whereas the Marine Corps Infantry has always been an elite unit.
What was the biggest change once you joined the Marine Corps? How did your life change? How did you get used to? What was the difference between sleeping at home and sleeping in a barracks?
It was a big change. I was, grew up fairly isolated, insulated as well from a lot of the world in my little town in Ohio, and so meeting just the vast amount of people from different backgrounds, different cultures was a shock at first. Not a bad shock, but very eye-opening. See that big cross-section of American society. And yeah, getting used to barracks life, it's the open showers, open rooms where everybody sleeps in, bunk beds, especially recruit training. Later on, when you get into units and you have actual barracks rooms, it gets to be more like apartments. But it's a huge transition in that lifestyle, that community, but it's a good transition too, because you're always surrounded by like-minded people, and the highest achievers and highest moral character of individuals you could possibly surround yourself with. And that was a big shock. Again, a good shock as far as not knowing those kind of people existed in the world, and being able to call them my friends and colleagues was very rewarding.
All right, and you say you enlisted in 2003. How long until you would be shipped out, and where to?
Yes, enlisted. It's in December 2003. I went to Parris Island, infantry school, then to Camp Pendleton, and it was, all my training occurred in 2004. I got to my unit in Camp Pendleton while they were still deployed in Fallujah, Iraq. That was originally intended to be a combat replacement to go over there, and thankfully they withheld those orders, me and a few other guys, and kept us there on camp to wait for our unit to come back to the United States. And so we did an entire training cycle with the unit we were assigned to. And then we pushed out to Ramadi, Iraq in March of 2005.
Oh yeah. Put that out.
Yes. This here is the city of Ramadi. As you can see, it's west of Fallujah, west of Baghdad, and it's part of the what they call the Sunni Triangle in the Al-Anbar province in Iraq, which during that time was seeing the heaviest fighting in Operation Iraqi Freedom. And as you see, that's the whole Al-Anbar province, which would be like the equivalent of a state in Iraq.
All right. And when you got over there, what was the routine?
Well, initially, it was a few days of getting stuff squared away. We were on a larger camp for a couple of days until we moved into our smaller FOB, Forward Operating Base, which was Hurricane Point. It's marked on the map there. And then the routine became, it'd be 4 days of patrolling, and then 4 days guarding what they called the government center, which was where they were trying to establish some provincial government in that region, and it was highly contested. It's pretty much a block. It was called the government center, and a lot of attacks there, organized attacks, the vehicle IEDs, and so as I said, we spent 4 days on the ground patrolling to the streets of the city, and then we'd go 4 days of guard duty at the government center, which is actually where we saw the most action. We had our guard post, and it's the same guard post all the time. All the insurgents knew where we'd be at all times. That went on for about 7 months, that routine. 4 days patrolling, 4 days at the government center, 4 days patrolling, 4 days at the government center. And the patrols would be split up, like a platoon would go out at a time, and then we'd split up some guys from the platoon who would drive the Humvees. And at first we didn't even have the armored Humvees. It has like these Mad Max kind of armored, welded jobs on open back Humvees. Eventually we got the up armored ones. But we dedicated some guys who were the drivers and machine gunners in the Humvees. And we also had some 7-ton trucks too that we'd ride in. And then out of the other 2 squads that were left, one squad would ride into vehicles as immediate reaction force, while the other squad would just walk the streets of the city. It's a very dangerous job, obviously. It's a very dense city, very dense population, like something you'd see in the United States. Large buildings, apartments, alleys, things of that nature. And that was our routine for 7 months there in Ramadi.
And that was your entire first tour?
Yes, that was my first tour in Iraq.
Is there anything in that time period that stands out above the others? Seeing how it was repetitive, or the same cycle?
Yes, a lot of things stand out. I'm not going to get too deep into some stuff, but there were a lot of firefights, a lot of IED explosions. We did lose a good amount of guys. A lot of guys were wounded. I was mildly wounded myself, but I don't really consider that to be anything compared to what the other guys received. So yeah, there were quite a few particular instances where there was some heavy fighting. It was house to house, street to street, door to door, that kind of stuff. There were times we had to call in Army tanks to blow down buildings for insurgents to be holed up at. We found plenty of caches of ordnance, weapons, ammunition. So yeah, there's a lot of moments. None sticks out more than the other, or at least none that I want to get too in depth with.
Can you talk about the the civilian population, or who you could tell that was civilians' receptions over the course?
That first tour was really hard. This is a very dense city, and it was a bustling city too. People would be out doing their day-to-day routine, and all of a sudden we'd be attacked, and you don't know who's friend or who's foe. And the Al-Qaeda operatives that were there, AQI, Al-Qaeda Iraq, they used the civilians as shields to hide behind, which made our job very difficult. We had to really restrain ourselves. We could not use rockets anymore. We could not call in airstrikes or things of that nature unless something was really bad. So everything just had to be handled. You just had to sit there and and get fired upon, and then look through the scope of your rifle and try to identify the shooter and take him out that way. For the most part, the civilian population in Ramadi was hostile, and that might have been due to heavy-handed tactics on our behalf of searching and cordoning areas. But at the same time, they facilitated and assisted the insurgents in that city. I'm not saying that's true for all Iraqis or for every city by any means, and my second tour was nothing like that whatsoever. But at that time in that city, the civilian population I would deem hostile.
All right, and the first 7 months, so you finished and went home around what time?
About the beginning, end of September, beginning of October, we came back to Camp Pendleton.
And from there, what brought you on to go on your second tour? Was it?
Well, after my first tour, we got some more new guys, had to refill our numbers, did another training cycle, and my second deployment was part of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, Special Operations Capable, where our company served as a boat company. We would just ride little Zodiacs in. We trained in amphibious raids and reconnaissance. And for those missions, I was a scout swimmer. I was the company's chief scout swimmer at the time. And that was a 6-month deployment. We operated out of Okinawa, Japan, and we sailed on ship, the USS Juno, between Japan, the Philippines, and actually did a little port visit in Zhangjiang, China, which is really fun. And that was pretty much that tour. It was just a lot of training, a lot of working with other countries and their Marine equivalents. And then came back, and I was supposed to get out of the Marine Corps. The end of my 4 years was almost up. And so I was assigned temporary duty to the regimental headquarters company, and they were starting a program to consolidate all the rifle training, marksmanship training, combat training at the regimental level. And so I went to a school to be what they call a preparatory marksmanship instructor. And I helped start up this what's called marksmanship training unit for 5th Marines. And while doing that, as I said, I fell under the headquarters company at the regimental level. And the regiment headquarters company is preparing to do a deployment to Iraq for a year out of Al Asad Air Base as a logistics and a command and control element. And to fill those numbers, they relied on infantry Marines to act as their security forces and stuff of that nature. And I was asked to join them for that deployment, so I extended my contract for another year to deploy to Iraq for a year with what's called RCT-5, Regimental Combat Team, 5th Marines, and where I participated in what we call Aero Scout missions for 6 months, and then long-range reconnaissance and interdiction missions out of Humvees for the last 6 months.
This was all out of Al Asad.
Yes. Well, that was where it was a large air base, but most of our operations took place in the far western reaches of the province, mostly patrolling the Syrian border, Jordanian border, even got down to the Saudi Arabian border a couple of times. And the mission there was trying to interdict terrorists coming in and out of the country. Whether, as I said, the first 6 months was doing this by helicopter assets. And then the last 6 months was just getting in some Humvees and driving out there, and we'd stay out there for a month or two at a time. Just patrolling the area, looking for insurgents. And it was not like my first tour. There was really no combat during that second tour. It was just a lot of meet and greets with the Bedouin villagers and the nomads coming through with their sheep. And that was really exciting. It was nice to see the other side of the culture there that was not hostile and very cooperative and friendly with us. And that pretty much sums up my second tour. And when I came back from that one, my time in the Marine Corps was up. I spent about another month on Camp Pendleton processing out, and then that was it.
From there, what was just coming home like? That difference between 2003 and the end of the second tour in Iraq.
You mean 2005?
2000.
The first tour?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the difference was there's polar opposites, which was nice. It was kind of a healing thing to come back and witness the good part of the society there and cooperative and friendly and welcoming populations. yeah, the last year, I mean, we found a couple caches and some stuff out in the desert. Insurgents were hiding, but there were no gunfights. We did find one insurgent. He was on the a most wanted list, or what you call it HVI, high value target. We did find him and brought him in, arrested him, brought him in. But it was, I mean, we were still on alert. It didn't get lackadaisical, but and to be honest, the last tour we were me and my guys were pretty much off the reservation, kind of out of rigs a little bit. I had a buddy at the armory who hooked me up with some really state-of-the-art weaponry, suppressed sniper rifles. So we had the little M4 carbines, thermal imaging devices. So that was a lot of fun to have those kind of assets. So I guess, I mean, it's helping us do our job, but it was nice having the good stuff for a change, as opposed to 2005, where we were just regular grunts carrying what we were issued and making do with what we had, which really wasn't too much back then.
What were you issued in 2005? What was standard gear, stuff in weaponry?
Standard issue was the M16A4 assault rifle, which is the full-sized M16. Mine had the M203 grenade launcher on it, and also had what's called the RCO, Rifle Combat Optic. The Army calls them ACOGs. It's a 4-power fixed scope. And then, being as how my specialty, the 0351 Assaultman, I had the Mark 153 small, shorter-fired, multi-purpose assault weapon, which fired rockets. And you could choose different rounds, anti-armor, thermal barrack, or high-explosive dual-purpose rounds for that. And in addition to that, I also carried the demolitions, the C4 blasting caps, the firing systems to set them off with. And then, as far as the other standard gear went, flak jacket, helmet, night vision goggles, and then the pouches for all the different kinds of grenades and our magazines for our rifles.
So after you left Iraq for the final time and came home and you were done with your service, what was coming home like back to South Carolina?
Well, first of all, I'm not from South Carolina. I did not want to go back to Ohio. It's a very boring, drab place in my point of view. So I had met the girlfriend that I have now. Actually, I had known her from Ohio years before, but I had ran into her when I was back in Ohio on leave after being in Japan, and we started dating then. So, and we dated for those last 2 years. I was in the Marines, and so when I came out, I had her to go back to. I got her in Ohio. I drove back from California to Ohio, got her, we moved to South Carolina. And it was very, very different, obviously. First of all, it'd be the first time I was cohabitating with a female. And second of all, I didn't have the structure of the military anymore. But it was very relaxing. And again, the final tour, that was, a peaceful tour in Iraq, was really therapeutic. And I think it really helped the transition to be successful as a civilian and not get caught up in being a veteran. I had a new life I was starting, and I was very excited about that, and I was looking forward to it, and I was looking forward to going back to school. Was one of the main reasons why I did get out.
So, just, I guess, personal interest to me, what was the difference, I guess, in the culture of America, technology, things that you left and came back and go, where did this come from?
Yes, a lot of stuff in society changed while I was in the Marines. The time I spent in there, I lived in the barracks the whole time. I didn't really associate with civilians or go out and stay up to date with what was current music-wise or technology or anything. I stayed in my Marine bubble and I just focused on that. And so, yeah, I mean, all the iPod stuff and iThings, the smartphones came around, and computers were totally different operating systems than I was used to. Which was kind of funny. It's not a big deal, but it kind of makes me feel dated to a degree as far as just in those 5 short years, how much society had changed technology-wise, and I think attitude-wise too. Because going in, there was still that patriotism that was fairly abound after 9/11 happened, And then and coming out, things had changed a little bit. I think people were getting tired of the wars, and that's totally understandable. So there's a little bit of that difference too. There was the big turn against President Bush, which I'm not going to say anything bad or positive for, but I'm just saying as a fact, there was definitely that shift in thinking from that early post 9/11 to just a few years after. And so I think society was getting tired of the wars, and that's okay. And there's never like any kind of a stigma of being a veteran. It's just an observation that I noticed personally.
So you have some pictures you brought today. Would you like to put them up?
Yes. I don't know how you want to work this.
You just tell me when you want to go to the next one.
Okay, this would have been the back out of the ramp of a CH-53 helicopter doing those helicopter-borne reconnaissance missions to the Syrian border. And as there's a tail gunner back there, and that's a really cool ride. Something I really enjoyed to do. And this would be an Aero Scout mission. We call that helicopter reconnaissance Aero Scout, by the way. And we would have to set down the desert to refuel the helicopters. And one of the large CH-53s you see on the right there would have a fuel bladder. And so our gunship escorts, Cobras and Hueys, would have to land and refill off of that. And I thought that was an interesting picture to share. And you see the landscape there too. I mean, it's like the surface of the moon in that part of Iraq. It's just these huge rocks. That's all it is rocks and sand. Really, really hostile terrain to operate in. And that's my stick in the back of the helicopter. I'm the one at the very back towards the door. And those are my guys for the helicopter missions. Go to the next one. These would be our Iraqi counterparts. They would go in operation with us as well. They called them commandos. I don't know how legit that really is, but they did operate with us, and they were an asset on the ground as far as crossing that cultural bridge a lot of times and talking with the locals. And here's a picture of an Aero Scout mission on the ground again. You can see an Iraqi commando there. We have an interpreter we're talking to, and then would be the elder of a small village who would, we do all the communicating through the village elder, of course.
Can you talk about a little bit more about elders in general, the culture, how much you dealt with, what it was like dealing with them?
And this is all in that last tour of Iraq, and that was usually very pleasant. Like a little nomadic village or small desert village would definitely have like their elder, who'd be like the mayor of that little area. And as a matter of respect, he's the first person you seek out, and that's who you talk to, you sit down with, you have tea, you talk about families, and it's important to set those kind of precedents first, and then we just simply ask if he's seen any terrorists or insurgents or foreigners would be a big one, because to us, sometimes we'd be a terrorist to them, or even asking if he'd seen any foreigners, because they'd point right back at us. Obviously, we're foreigners, so it's kind of little things from that point of view you sometimes forget. But yeah, that'd be who we talk to, and usually very welcoming. So we'd come in their tents or their small buildings, take their shoes or boots off, sit down, have chai, tea, and eat rice and stuff with our hands. And it's a pretty cool experience from a cultural point of view.
They're not an official in any sort of way. They just happen into this world.
No, they're not any kind of official.
Uh-huh.
That would have been one of my lieutenants handing out candy to kids. Again, this would have been the second tour, the helicopter missions. I have a lot more pictures, by the way, of that second tour, because there was no one shooting at me then. So if you see a trend, that's why. That's a picture of me standing out there. I think it's a pretty cool looking picture with all my gear on. And there's an Iraqi commando, again, talking to the families. It's important to be sure that the Iraqis were the ones that were engaging the women and children more, especially the women with the culture there. It'd be a social faux pas for one of us Americans to walk up to the women and start talking to them or trying to establish a line of communication. That was a picture of me as a scout swimmer training in Okinawa, Japan. And that was on a newspaper cover, actually, for the Okinawa newspaper. So this is searching a vehicle in Iraq. Nothing much there. I thought it was a good picture of a sandstorm. People talk about sandstorms in the Middle East a lot. Well, this is us kind of waiting one out on the Syrian border so we can get moving again. Another picture, this is the long-range reconnaissance on the Syrian border operating out of Humvees. And this is just me walking up to a berm, checking for mines on the border between Iraq and Syria.
What are you carrying there?
That is an M4 carbine, the shortened version of an M16 with that same 4-power optic on top. I have the M203 grenade launcher on there, and the box on the side is a laser designator that projects a laser beam, either infrared that can be seen only with night vision goggles, or a red visible laser for aiming in low light conditions.
And it looks like you have a lot less gear in general. No pack.
Yeah, this was kind of, said we're off the reservation here at middle of nowhere, so we were able to de-escalate our posture. And so a lot of times we would, if we had to check something out real quick, we just wore ball caps or boonies. And just the bare minimum of gear. And that's us at a range. This is, yeah, that's at Al Assad at a shooting range. Kind of training, kind of hamming up a little bit. This is kind of the fun side of stuff sometimes when you get to, there's no bars to go to or movies to see. So if you get a chance to go shoot your guns and not have the higher-ups really harping at you, it's not a bad way to spend the day, I guess.
And is that's American soldiers just embracing the local fashion?
Yes. Usually frowned upon by the establishment, but when they're not around, we try our best to not look intimidating with when you see someone with the body armor and the helmet and all that stuff on, it's an immediate intimidation. So since we were able to operate with some loose rules that second time, we would do our best to not look like invaders or occupiers, but just more like this guy's out there asking questions, really. That was a Iraqi police outpost on this, right about the corner where Iraq meets Jordan and Syria. Camel herd from some nomads. They were moving up from Sudan, actually, through western Iraq, and I got a chance to ride one of them, as you see there, which might have been the highlight of my Marine Corps career, actually. And then those were the herders themselves. Just those two guys was managing all those camels you just saw, and that wasn't even all the camels. There are hundreds of them. That's standing over the Euphrates River, actually, and you can see probably remnants of what they used to call the Fertile Crescent. How fertile and lush that probably was at one point in history in that valley right there. This was coming back from my final patrol in the Marine Corps, my second time in Iraq. It was a foot patrol at the Syrian border to check out some activity. And I know, I kind of like that picture. It was a fun night, just kind of laid back, walking in the night. And it wasn't too long after that I was out of the Marine Corps. This would be a picture of us on a landing ship, carrying our gear for our Zodiac rafts for a training exercise in the Philippines. And that small landing ship would have launched from that larger ship in the background, the USS Juno. Here were my best friends, I will say, before heading off to Okinawa. We were all in the same platoon together. I guess I'll start the guy kneeling here is Joe Stonerock, Clifford Pease, Eric Burns, Eric Roskam, Ben Herring, Mark McAuliffe, that's myself, and Joshua Barfield. That's my other best friend, Jim. This was the first week of our first tour in Iraq, and this is in Ramadi. And him and I were battle buddies that entire 7 months. Great guy. He saved my life quite a few times, actually, so I kind of like that picture a lot. And that was me, a very young Lance Corporal. And you can see that was a Humvee that we were riding in. It was an open back Humvee with some slapdash armor welded to the side was all we had.
So you're inside of that right now, going on the road, though, too.
You get ready to leave the base. My helmet's not on yet, but we were just getting ready to leave the base on our first patrol. This is on a rooftop. That was my fire team leader in 2005, Corporal Legal, who had been a sniper previously in a Battle of Fallujah. And it's what you typically call an overwatch, where you take a position on a roof and typically not taking pictures of each other, but you're looking out and you're observing for threats to the guys who'd be patrolling on the ground. And that is the city of Ramadi. That was my battleground for 2005. And as you can see, it doesn't look very inviting. Lots of places for enemies to hide, to plant bombs. At any point, any of those vehicles down there could have been a bomb. And yeah, very, very discerning location to have to fight all your battles in. That's an example of a cache we found at a police station. Some mortar and rocket rounds that were buried in the rubble. There's some more of those. And that was right across from that government center I was telling you about earlier that we would have to guard.
And how long was it before y'all found that? Were you in the government center protecting it before you found those in the rubble one day?
No, that was just on patrol one day. Just, they hadn't been there before, and they had stationed them at some point. I don't know, at some point, terrorists came in, or insurgents, and set these things up as a cache to use as a future attack against the government center. And that's how we got them out when those open back Humvees just piled in there. Yeah. Another picture, this would have been taken from the government center. This is one of the posts I sat at called Post Bravo. And you can see in the picture there are 2 Abrams tanks. And you can probably imagine what kind of day that was.
Yeah, I didn't even realize the one closer.
Yeah. Again, this towards the end of my first tour in Iraq and Ramadi. Young Lance Corporal, you can see my M16A4 with the grenade launcher slung to my side there. In my hand is that Mark 153 rocket launcher I was telling you about earlier. And that's a crew-served weapon. And the second guy would actually screw in these rockets in the back. The whole assembly is over 5 feet long. And that's me hamming it up. You can see I'm missing a tooth in that picture. It's still somewhere there in Iraq, thanks to a piece of shrapnel. And that was my squad leaving Ramadi in 2005. That was all that was left of us. It's typically 13 Marines would be a squad, and there's a handful of people in that picture. Another picture of Western Iraq from my second deployment. An example of like a Bedouin village. That's why I put this one up here. Again, totally different from the Ramadi pictures. And that's a picture in Ramadi as well, early on. Another picture on the back of a helicopter showing my stick and the Iraqi commandos.
Can you define a stick for us cities here?
Yes, a stick would be like a squad that's in a helicopter. It has a special term. If you take your squad and you put them in a helicopter, then they're a stick. That's pretty much it. And that was my stick. We were stick 1. It's a picture of the guys there. And that was, just to get an idea of like the kind of stuff you carry, this was my personal loadout doing the helicopter missions. As you can see, there's a radio, my M4 with a grenade launcher, night vision goggles, different kinds of smoke grenades, thermite grenades, fragmentation grenades. And then I had various rounds for the grenade launcher. It's important, I thought, operating with helicopters when they're your only way in and way out, to carry a lot of pyrotechnics for signaling. So, although there are some high explosive rounds for the grenade launcher, a lot of those are smoke and flares as well to mark our positions.
That was all. Well, that's all of your photos. To wrap it up, is there anything in particular you have might have missed, you want to go back to?
No, I think I covered it all.
I guess just looking back, what is it now? When you contemplate it, what are the things that, I guess, out of the whole entire experience that stand out, and how do you feel it changed your life?
Well, I'm definitely very proud of my service. I had a very good run in the Marines, had a lot of opportunities. I worked very hard, got promotions early, and I did my part to be a good Marine, which opened up a lot of opportunities for me to do some of the stuff that you saw in the pictures there that would be fairly atypical of your typical infantry Marine. As far as lessons I carry with me is that work ethic. I don't really have bad days anymore, as long as no one's shooting at me, I guess. And just I've had that feeling there's like nothing I can't do after going through what I have gone through, and I don't regret a single second of it. And the only thing I miss about it would be my friends. You don't find that kind of character in the civilian world typically, but you can't be the same fire team forever. So I do miss that. But other than that, I'm glad I served. I'm glad I served when I did, and I'm glad I got out when I did.
All right. Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for doing the interview with us today.
Thank you for doing this for us, Daniel. I really appreciate it.